Yep. Hopefully we all having a righteous rising and a righteous afternoon. Yeah. I wanted to remind us um, that the propaganda on aliens may have some truth to it. I'm gonna say it again. The propaganda surrounding the aliens and the alien folklore, it may have some truth to it. Okay? I want us to understand that the aliens, okay, short for alienizing and alienation, okay, it represents the separation that man has to all sentient beings. You listen, when you've been separate for so long, a lot of us have been separate from ourselves. Okay? When you've been separate from yourselves to the point it's easier for you to be separate from other human beings, it's easier for you to be separate from all other sentient life, okay? Then not only is aliens real, but also you've become the alien. I want us to understand what's going on. A lot of us are subscribing to this folklore because it caters to a part of us that is romanticizing the idea of being alone. Yeah, we are falling victims to our own insecurities and our own anxieties. We've been away from each other for far too long. We have felt different for far too long to the point we don't know how to um, come back into the fold of life, come back into the fold of humanity. Okay, we've been separate for far too long. They've been teaching us to alienate indigenous peoples, to alienate immigrants, to alienate migrants. All of this have been taught. We've been taught and being taught to alienate indigenous practices, indigenous cultures. Okay, these particular practice will help us to reach our highest states, and our highest states is the gateway to our highest power because we are our highest power. We are the energies that's going to change our lives. But if we never step into our highest powers, then we never step into godhood. Okay, we never step into the omnipotence of godhood. And I want us to understand God is plural, like fish. God is plural, like fish, meaning I cannot be God alone. I require you. I cannot be God alone. I require the frequency that includes other beings, not just humans. Okay? Remember this, God is omnipotent, omnipotent. I cannot be God alone if God is plural. Okay? I require all other sentient beings. Okay? I require things like the elements. God is also the fire, the water, the wind, the earth, the space. I require an understanding of this, but then I also require the ability to move freely throughout these spaces and dimensions. Okay? God is plural like fish. God also exists in the heavens of the universe, not the earth, the heavens of the universe. And what does that mean? As above, so below. There's a universe inside me. So God is also operating in the highest realms of my body, the highest realms of my being. What does that mean? That means it's not just my mind, it is not just my spirit. Okay, it is not just a fragment of my body, but this is all of them working in tandem for the greater good of myself and the world. Because what is good for you, okay, will also be good for the world. This is what I mean. When you are a better individual, when you are your better self, when you are your highest self, the world receives the same benefit. Okay, we need people that are prepared to be themselves. We need people that are prepared to walk in purpose. We need people that are prepared to be, okay, meaningful people. Okay, so I appreciate you, those of you that are aliens, those of you who decided to be those black sheep, those of you who decided to move, okay, as righteous beings. Okay, and this is why righteousness is deified. Okay, throughout history, time after time again, righteous people become deified only because, okay, only because it is much more easier to be a low frequency. It is much more easier, okay, to operate in your lower nature. Okay, the ancients showed us the higher nature and the lower nature. This is why in ancient Egypt we see anthropomorphic examples of this when we see half man and half animal. Okay, showing us that it is very natural to have a higher nature and a lower nature. But then those ancient cultures, remember the animal was on top. Okay, remember when you see images like Tehuti or Thoth. Okay, you see the top part of the body being a bird and the bottom being a man. What does that mean? A conquering of the lower half, a conquering of the lower extremities, a conquering of our lower animalistic nature and bringing it unto the higher self, bringing it back to God, bringing it unto the Savior and saving ourselves. But we only gonna save our lower self, okay, when we understand how to transform that into our higher self, how to utilize the intellect of our higher self, how to utilize, okay, our most promising emotions that have been transmuted for the good, okay, for the sake of our own benefit. Okay, when you're doing this, you operating in your higher self. You operating in your higher power. Okay, you're operating in your higher power. Remember, these prophets always said, okay, I and the Father are one. Okay, you must become one with your higher self. Okay, because some of us are one with our lower self. And what does that mean? That in turned us to the animals. Okay, so I wanted us to understand what it truly means to be the alien and what it truly means, okay, to be separate, be called to live in this world and not of this world. I wanted us to truly understand, okay, the idea that, okay, we're practicing separatism and separation from our higher self. Look how distant they said you were from God. Look how distant they said you were from your higher power. In all actuality, okay, all actuality, this was just a frequency you had to tap in. In all actuality, you was always dealing with yourself. In all actuality, okay, supreme divine or connected consciousness, universal consciousness was going to be manifested in you when you step into the universal consciousness of the universities within, when you step into the idea that you belong to all sentient beings. I mean, the universal consciousness that you step in when you start understanding your astrological cosmological relationship with the stars, okay, and also your cosmological relationship with the earth. You have this relationship, correct? I'm not making this up, correct? I'm not using religion to describe this relationship, correct? What does that mean? That means it exists before and after religion. It is one of the eldest traditions on the earth for you to practice this relationship. And when you do that, you operate in your higher self. Why? Because the cosmos is not going to bring you down, it's up. The earth isn't going to bring you down, it lifts you up. Okay, so when you keep these indigenous practices, you become the alien. Yeah, you start operating like God. Okay, you start operating in your higher self. The earth begins to heal you, begin to speak to you in different ways because it understands you, okay, as a divine transport of information. You done became vessel because maybe the earth had to tell somebody something. You done became vessel. Maybe the water and other elements had to tell somebody something. Okay, you done became vessel. Okay, maybe the stars had to tell somebody something. Like right now, it's Wednesday. Wednesday at the House of Communication. Okay, and it's time to communicate. Okay, time to communicate with community, communicate with your purpose, communicate with your spirit, communicate with your emotions, communicate with your family. This is Mercury having this conversation with you. Okay, you are a vessel. Okay, but when you understand this relationship and you practice, okay, what's necessary, then it becomes easier for you to operate in your higher power. Then it becomes easier, okay, for you to be godlike. Then it becomes easier, okay, for you to be omnipotent. Okay, and again, God is plural, so we couldn't do this alone. Okay, you must tell yourself that you couldn't do this alone. See what's going on when you alienate or demonize the idea of God. You also separating people, separating people and putting them alone. I'm gonna say it again. You cannot do this alone. Okay. So when we practice the folklore in the romancing, okay, of the ideologies of alienism that is separating us from reality, that is also separating us from each other, okay, we also put distance between us and the universe and convince ourselves that we can do this alone. And God is plural, like fish. You cannot be God alone. I'm gonna say that again. God is plural. You cannot be God alone. Maybe you can be God like, maybe you can be godly, but you can't be God alone. Okay? So yeah, we speaking on aliens because it's been a lot of propaganda on aliens. Okay. Um, your president, the president, we're gonna say Mr. Trump. Okay? No disrespect to anybody, even him. I don't disrespect people for a living. Okay. The president has operated or has spoken on the ideas of aliens. Okay. Um, The previous president, Barack Obama, also spoke on the idea of aliens. Okay, it's been coming up on your news feed. It's been coming up right in the media. Okay, we've been hearing propaganda after propaganda, but also look at ICE. Aliens done arose and then ICE done arose. Aliens done arose and then ICE done arose. This governmental system, okay, here to remove and separate people even further from their land, okay, and also from each other. The aliens arose and ICE also arose. See where I'm going? See where I'm going? So you're not only being taught to alienate part of yourself, but you also being taught to alienate people. Okay, you taught to separate people. Separatism, imagine it as a virus. Separatism, imagine it as a disease. It done transform into introvertism. It done transform into loneliness. It done transform into selfishness. Separatism, that is. It done transform into you alienating in energies and individuals in life. You even alienating energies. Okay, this is why certain people do not believe that people can be good. Yeah. So how many times we didn't believe that somebody was being good to us? Can I get a witness? How many times did we fall victim to the idea, okay, of your own mind convincing you that someone may be trying to hurt you? You may be asking yourself, well, what do they gain? What point is it? Because you're really saying, what point is there to be good in this lifetime? What point are listen? I get questioned. I get looked at with that look often. People look at me. Why would you be good? You don't even have to be good. You seem clever enough to be able to do what you want. Why would you be good? Why would you decide to be Batman and not the Joker? Yeah. Why would you decide to come help an individual? Why would you spill out hundreds and hundreds of years of wisdom for free unto the world? Why would you do this? Why would you go out and dedicate and donate your spirit, your money, your time, your energy, the love of your family with people who do not know you and may not be able to appreciate this or even understand what is going on in the moment? Why would you do this? Just because we've been taught to distrust love. We've been taught to distrust humanity. And instead of complaining about it, I'd rather reteach you how to do so. I'd rather bring you back into your human fold. See, I'm doing this to show you that the gods do exist. I'm doing this to show you that the aliens are here. I'm doing this to show you that righteousness is a real thing. Some people have indeed a good heart. Matter of fact, not some, more than you realize. They have taught you it's a dog eat dog world, but believe it or not, dogs don't eat dogs. Dogs don't eat dogs. No, they eat other things. It's not a dog eat dog world. When someone tells you that, you tell them, no, your world is a dog eat dog world because you a low beast to the earth and you think in this way. Okay, you think in this way, and with you, it's survival of the fittest. It's a survival mindset. Dog eat dog. That's survival mindset. We don't. First off, we're not dogs, nor do we have to live in that ideology. It's not dog eat dog world. It's not dog eat dog world. Okay, and if anything, it's going to be the gods being the gods. If anything, in my world at the least. Okay, it's kings lift queens. We raising kings and queens in my world at least. Okay, it's the highest power transforming even a lowest power at all times. Because this is an ongoing process in life, transforming a lowest power back into their highest power. Yeah, and in my world at least, ain't no dogs that's gonna eat dogs. The birds gonna fly with the birds. They say birds of a feather fly together. Birds of a feather fly together. Birds of different colors gonna fly with birds of different colors. Birds with different powers gonna fly with birds of different powers. But birds that's doing the same thing, you just a bird. You just a bird. Okay? So let's not let them alienate life anymore. Let's not let them take life away from us anymore. It is our life, but it's going to be up to us to fight for it. Nevertheless, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this content. Right. I'm sure you enjoy this content. Just listen to yourself, listen to your spirit, and speak into my reflection. And I know what I like to receive and I know what I like to hear. So if that's you, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you cut your post notifications on. Make sure you join me every live. Okay. I'm always gonna have an abundance of wisdom, an abundance of energy for you. And even when I don't, I'm gonna have me to give you. Right? Because all the time we ain't gonna have all that extra stuff there. but you still gonna get me. Okay, this is my donation. This is my dedication. This is my purpose to return the power that is yours back to you. Okay, and let you not lean on any outside influence for any influence on your life. Okay. Nevertheless, we have a slogan here. We enrich minds, we enrich bodies, we enrich spirits. Okay, because enrichment is going to keep us from an impoverished spirit. Because poor people do poor things.